Good morning, Unifor. Thank you. Sisters, brothers, siblings, friends, family, and international guests, welcome to Vancouver. Welcome to the West. This is the first time a Unifor Constitutional Convention has been held in the Western region since our founding in 2013. And of course, we're on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We honor these nations and reaffirm our commitment to reconciliation, not just in words, but in action. We believe in teamwork in Unifor, and I work with an amazing, hard-working leadership team led by Lana, along with Len and Daniel and my fellow regional directors, Jen and Samia. Thank you to my colleagues on the leadership team for your friendship and your vision. I would also like to thank Leanne Marsh and Guy Deforge, our BC and Prairie Council chairs, and the rest of the executive members and the activists within those active regional councils for their dedication. And of course, to our hardworking staff and the many activists, shop stewards, local union executives, and committee members, we see you, and this is your speech also. These are your victories, and we should all be proud of our great union. I've been honored to serve as Western Regional Director since 2019. It's been quite the ride, with major challenges arising each term. When I gave my last constitutional report in 2022, I spoke of the challenges we faced and the determination of our members. Workers were fed up, and our job was to help them fight back. I spoke about organizing, about the challenges and the obligation we all have to organize more workers than ever before, to increase our efforts, to expand our scope, and to take on the biggest corporate giants in the world. A right-wing Manitoba government under Heather Stephenson was continuing years of conservative leadership started by Brian Pallister, who had restricted public sector bargaining and ripped up card check organizing. Manitoba anti-scab legislation was a distant dream. Prior NDP governments refused it many times, and they kept card check laws at a high 65% to organize. It was also the final days of Jason Kenney in Alberta, but we knew that Danielle Smith and her pro-Trump supporters were waiting to take over and make it even worse. Leaving 2022, we were also heading into critical provincial elections in every single Western province. So could we deal with all the challenges that faced us in 2022 and actually make progress? It was a tall order. But friends, as always, and always with determined struggle, I'm happy to stand here today and say, yes, Unifor, we did that. Our team have helped locals take on a historic number of disputes in the past few years. As you heard, well over 100 by now. These picket lines were bold, and they made real gains for workers. We proved that solidarity crosses borders when dozens showed up in Winnipeg on short notice in the cold last March to support CN Autoport workers who had watched CN use scab labor in Nova Scotia. Our Western Unifor activists helped stop a CN train, and they would do it again in a heartbeat. Let's go. Since then, we have also organized more CN Autoport workers in Edmonton who saw what a fighting union in action could do. We saw another example, as Lana mentioned, of Unifor activists standing up when over 2,100 DHL workers were locked out after rejecting employer concessions this summer. But they held firm across the country, including at many picket lines right here in the West. Our colleagues at the ITF brought international support, and DHL workers all over the world were paying attention to this dispute. As you heard, DHL had to suspend operations by June 20th, right as the new anti-scab law came in. They begged the Labour Minister to use Section 107 to end a dispute that they started, but for once, they came up empty-handed. And on June 28th, our DHL members won and secured wage increases, stronger protections, benefits, and more. And as Lana said, this is the first national dispute resolved under the new federal anti-scab legislation, and it's a clear victory for workers here and around the world. And just out here, we just won a strike out here a few weeks ago for our members at Cascade Aerospace. But I will mention two disputes that are still going on in this region. At the Sheraton Guildford in Surrey, local 3,000 members have been on strike since July 5th. After our successes in hospitality bargaining, some employers still want to get away with paying low wages. And this particular employer has a terrible record. There was another strike there in 2018. Our Sheraton-Guildford members know their worth, and they are refusing to back down. So a financial appeal just went out to locals. Please dig deep and help these workers win a fair agreement. And we're almost 200 days into a dispute for Unifor workers in the Cowichan Valley over the continued reliance on private transit contractors by BC Transit and the huge gaps in pay and benefits and pension that result. BC Transit is a Crown agency, but it actually outsources most bus services across the entire province through private contracts, except for in Victoria, where the hundreds of members there are proud members of Unifor 333 BC. Unifor has helped achieve contract flipping legislation for transit workers right here in 2018, and transit workers have been fighting back ever since while the government does nothing. We've had 4 long strikes in 3 years, affecting tens of thousands of residents in Whistler, Chilliwack, Courtenay, Comox, and now in Cowichan. We've held rallies outside BC Transit and in front of the legislature. We even brought workers from the bargaining committee in to meet the Labour Minister and to the Premier's office directly. And the sad thing is, the BC NDP's 2024 platform promised a review of private transit contracts, but no action has followed. This is now the longest transit strike in BC history by far, and we continue to stand behind all the transit workers in their struggle for a fair agreement. So again, please be generous and support these workers who've been on strike a long time. Thank you. As you know, the challenges with the arrival of a second Trump White House have been massive also. I've been representing Unifor on 3 new provincial government task forces this year in the face of these critical threats. On Premier Wabkanu's Manitoba-US Trade Council, the Trade and Economic Security Task Force formed by Premier David Eby, and I've been serving on the BC Softwood Lumber Advisory Council, where I'm working with the Forestry Minister and others. It's critical to be in those rooms, because I can tell you the business groups love a good crisis, and they put forward their wish list of anti-worker ideas every single time at every single meeting. Give us all the money, they say. We'll take care of workers, but it's only us in the room that are there to keep that focus on the workers as it should be. And we've seen the impact of these trade attacks right across the country, but here in BC as well. Pre-packed furniture manufacturing moved more than 170 jobs this spring in Delta, BC to its North Carolina facility. This company was founded right here in BC 45 years ago, and it was locally owned until it was sold to a private equity firm in 2019, and 170 jobs disappeared. Shame. And as you heard from Lana and Daniel, the crisis for forestry workers have been building, and we have been pushing hard. We brought all the unions representing forestry workers in BC together for a historic forestry summit. We created a blueprint for reform. We gained attention from the Premier and the Forestry Minister about the building crisis. We pushed the NDP to make major commitments on forestry in their most recent campaign, and that the BC Premier and Forest Minister have now made getting a softwood lumber deal one of their highest priorities. We've pushed Danielle Smith and demanded her government stand up for forestry, and we're pushing the federal government to do more also. We've toured mills with ministers and met with coastal First Nations to discuss deeper collaboration to create sustainable forestry jobs and strong forestry communities. Forestry is foundational in Canada. Governments at all levels must stop listening to the corporations and instead listen to the forestry workers and the community leaders who want a long-term, sustainable industry with good union jobs. We welcome $700 million in loan guarantees and $500 million in diversification funds announced recently, but we need much more detail. What about job guarantees? And what about the help for the workers who are suffering right now? And of course, meanwhile, the wildfires are getting worse every year. Our members at the Fairmont Hotel in Jasper National Park are still affected by the devastating fire last July. Guy and I worked with the Prairie Regional Council to make sure we could get funds to the local to help with the rebuilding. Pilots represented by Unifor have been flying in and out of threatened northern Saskatchewan communities. Port Alberni and near Port Alberni and other communities were under evacuation order again this summer, when we recently put out a statement on wildfire issues and risks, because there's a lot of work to be done. This problem has many dimensions, but also opportunities for our members to get involved, and we must keep working hard on that. And as you've heard, we were the largest union on the ground by far during the last Alberta election. And our member organizers came within 1,200 votes and 6 seats from toppling Danielle Smith. Unifor Local 707A member Tanika Chiasson also ran for the NDP in Fort McMurray Wood, Buffalo. And we have recently helped in several by-elections won by the NDP. We've recently been pushing Danielle Smith to stand up for education workers, and we joined the Alberta Solidarity Pact with 20 other unions uniting over 250,000 workers in Alberta. And we're not done, not by a long shot. We also helped bring about real political change in Manitoba. We spoke out during the horrible election campaign of the PCs, and we covered our Unifor office windows with a massive Search the Landfill banner. We supported that election campaign as the largest union on the ground by far, and our efforts helped defeat the Conservatives and elect the NDP majority of government under the most popular premier in the country, Premier Wab Kinew. And more Unifor members were involved. Tracy Smith is a Unifor member who ran, and she's now the Minister of Education in Manitoba. We also, as you heard, insisted on anti-scab legislation, and the new government didn't waste time. They delivered fast, and again, we've achieved now anti-scab legislation in Manitoba as well. We saw enhancement of the new flyer facilities in Winnipeg. They're increasing Canadian content with new buses starting this September. We're very excited about that. We met with Manitoba cabinet ministers on our Keep It in the Pipe campaign. Manitoba also became the first province to join the National Pharmacare program. And we saw in Saskatchewan discrimination used to help mobilize the right-wing base of Scott Moe. But we fought an election in Saskatchewan last fall as well. Workers still face the lowest minimum wage in the country, tied with Alberta, and that province's poor healthcare performance was a top-of-mind issue. I stood with Carla Beck, the NDP leader, and about 50 Unifor Local 594 members who were assembled for a press conference in the last few days of the campaign. We stood outside Gate 7, where I and many other Unifor members were arrested defending workers during that lockout in 2020. Many of you have also been to Gate 7, no doubt. But election night was not a good night for Scott Moe. We achieved the best results that the Saskatchewan NDP had seen in 17 years, moving from 14 seats to 27, and 5 cabinet ministers lost their seats. And just like every other province, we also had Unifor members involved, not only helping with the campaign, but running. We had 3 Unifor members running, and as Lana said, Jordan McPhail from Local 2S was elected, and he is already a great MLA. And here in British Columbia, in last year's election, we had dozens of members on the ground from many different locals in BC working hard to defeat a Conservative wave and retain a majority government. And again, a Unifor member from 111 was on the ballot in Delta. Our results? Another majority government. The third and only time we have seen 3 NDP governments in a row in BC. A win that proves that every vote truly does count. So I want to say on all these campaigns, thank you to all of our member organizers and to all the locals and staff who helped put on such massive election efforts in each province in the last few years. I've also been working since this spring as a member on the new Federal Sustainable Jobs Partnership Council, created after we and many others fought for the new Canadian Sustainable Jobs Act. We're engaging on sustainable jobs and economic opportunities to benefit workers and communities instead of government only following the corporate agenda, as Daniel spoke about. Our council will report to the Federal Minister of Natural Resources this fall as he tables his Sustainable Jobs Action Plan in Parliament by year's end. And internationally, I joined our ITF colleagues in South Korea to help support container truckers and contribute to the Safe Rates campaign, which, as you heard, is now ongoing all around the world. Our Unifor delegation also played a big role at the ITF convention in Morocco, where Lana does an amazing job, and Jennifer too, and others representing us there. And as you've heard, and as Ken spoke about, the presentation we just had, Unifor supports international peace. And we have been speaking out against war and genocide everywhere. Here in British Columbia, we hosted a forum in New Westminster celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Northern Irish Peace Agreement with MPs from Ireland, UBC guests, and the Mayor of Burnaby. And as a member on the Social Justice Fund Board, I'm continually amazed at the incredible work our union does all over the world. And sadly, we know the world is getting worse in so many ways. And the work is more important than ever. Now, many of you may know, I joined my union many years ago when I helped organize my own workplace more than 25 years ago in Victoria under single-step certification or card check. I know when organizing laws protect workers instead of putting them at risk, and why it's so important to build power for change. When the BC Liberals became government in 2001, they ripped up card check immediately, and the effect was dramatic. Certifications cratered from hundreds a year to only a few dozen for most of the next 2 decades. We saw less organizing, smaller units, and large employers like Walmart and Amazon thinking they could remain untouchable and unorganizable. But Unifor played a big role in pushing for the return of BC card check certification, and we won that campaign too in June 2022. John Horgan, who we sadly lost, even sent us a personally signed copy of that legislation with a note on it, get out there and organize. The impact of restoring card check was immediate. More than 100% increase in certification filings in 1 year, the highest in over a decade. Almost 9,000 BC workers became members of new certified bargaining units in 2023. 9,000 workers. Shortly after being elected and with strong Unifor support, the NDP reintroduced single-step card check certification in Manitoba also. And I am very happy to report that card check is now law in Manitoba at a 50% plus one threshold, down from that prior 65% requirement under previous NDP governments. The battle for card check will continue, but it's not enough on its own. It remains only one tool in the toolbox, and we need to do more. And we have been. We've added new staff. We've trained new member organizers. We held organizing summits at both the Prairie and BC regional councils involving local leaders and activists in the process and training them on the latest rules and trends around organizing. In Alberta, canned carb workers in Medicine Hat, customer care workers at the Calgary airport, and CN Autoport workers in Edmonton joined Unifor. In Saskatchewan, Local 594 welcomed new energy workers at the Co-op ethanol complex. In BC, we organized the Cascades Casino in Delta, spa workers at the Fairmont Empress, transit workers in Quesnel, contracted airport workers at Vancouver Airport, and Nikola Clean Power in Merritt, and creative service workers in Rogers Media. And we finally got certifications at Walmart. Certifying that large warehouse in Ontario, followed quickly after by truck drivers in BC and Alberta, and they are now all in bargaining for first collective agreements with Unifor. But we knew that tackling these large Amazon warehouses would take another level of effort. In June 2023, I stood in front of a large Amazon warehouse in BC with Chris Smalls from the Amazon Labor Union, who had helped spearhead the only successful Amazon vote in the US in Staten Island. Samia, Hashi, and I, and the rest of the member organizing team, announced the launch of Unifor's Amazon Warehouse Workers Unite campaign that day. We continued with a media blitz. We put organizers on the ground for months, for all shifts, and we paired it with SkyTrain and transit ads near the stations by the warehouses. We made organizing Amazon workers the focus of our 2023 Labor Day, and we distributed thousands of Warehouse Workers Unite t-shirts to our members and families to help spread the word. And we started signing cards, and in early 2024, we applied for certification at 2 large Amazon Fulfillment Center warehouses right here. We saw a massive spike in reported membership numbers from Amazon, and we withdrew our applications temporarily. Shortly after, though, we filed another certification application to represent workers at the large Amazon fulfillment center known as YVR2. The Labour Board ordered a historic first-ever vote while arguments for the certification continued. This was quite the shock for Amazon, and they filed an appeal immediately, demanding that the BC Labour Board hold an emergency hearing to cancel the vote. And when the Labour Board didn't respond, they applied a few hours later to the BC Supreme Court to demand that it quash the Labour Board decision to order a vote in the first place. But the court didn't budge, and a few hours later, the BC Labour Board quickly threw out their appeal. So the vote went ahead in May 2024, but it's been sealed pending the hearing. That hearing started this year. It took 18 days. We had brave Amazon workers who testified. We had Amazon managers testified, and we had records which proved that Amazon planned a ramp-up of hiring to pad the employee list to try to deny the union a certification. And finally, only a few weeks ago, in July of this year, the Labour Board found that Amazon interference in our union drive was so bad that it completely undermined the process. I am incredibly happy to say that the BC Labour Board then issued an automatic certification for 750 workers at Amazon YVR2 to Unifor, our first certification at Amazon, not our last, and the largest Amazon certification ever in Canada. Now, of course, it's Amazon. So they filed another appeal, and they claimed that they did not have to comply with anything in the meantime. The BC Labour Board dismissed Amazon's appeal a few days later and said it was Amazon's own behavior that was so bad that it was not just an unfair labor practice, it was an abuse of the board's processes and an attack on the principles of the entire BC Labour Code. Now, we received a new order. Not many people know this yet. We received a new order from the Labour Board in the last few days, allowing the union, ordering Amazon to allow us to host 6 different meetings of 1 hour each inside the Amazon YVR warehouse in the employee lunchroom, that Amazon has to advertise the meetings all through the facility, and Amazon has to pay the employees who attend all of those meetings. This is, I want to clap too. This is the first time that I'm aware of that Amazon has been ordered to allow union reps to meet with their employees within their facility on paid union time. So we are working with many Amazon workers, you'll hear from Justin later this week, on building a campaign for what they need in their very first collective agreement, and we look forward to getting into negotiations with Amazon. We've scaled up efforts at other Amazon facilities, though. We have organizers right now on the ground here in British Columbia handing out cards. In fact, I just got a letter from Amazon's lawyer yesterday telling us to stop organizing their people because, we were interrupting things. So we ripped that up and we continue on. So we're not going to stop until we achieve that first collective agreement that the Amazon workers so desperately need. And then we're going to do it again, and again, and again, and we're going to keep organizing this sector and changing lives forever. So thank you to everyone. This was a team effort, proving that when we unite and when we work hard, there's no limit to what we can achieve in organizing. And no employer is untouchable. None of you. We're coming. Now, I've also been visiting on the ground with many of you and our members this term, from hotels to a women's shelter, with Lana, to manufacturing and bottling facilities, to printing plants, mills, to going 3,500 feet underground at a potash mine, and as high as the top of the CN Tower. I've visited many different Unifor workplaces, learning firsthand the important work our members do, so we can continue to push hard for improvements to their lives, and I would like to thank everyone in the locals who took the time to help out with those visits. Veuillez excuser mon français. J'espère ne pas faire trop d'erreurs. Mais je tiens à m'adresser directement à nos collègues du Québec. Puisque cette conférence est bilingue, je vais faire de mon mieux. Je veux vous redire toute ma solidarité. Je n'ai que par la force de toutes les parties de notre syndicat que nous sommes vraiment forts. Chaque milieu de travail, chaque secteur, chaque section locale. Et pour moi, cela inclut toujours nos camarades du Québec. J'ai eu le plaisir de participer à plusieurs de vos conseils du Québec, à Trois-Rivières et à Québec, et je suis toujours impressionné par le respect que vous démontrez pour l'Assemblée et entre vous, même lors de débats passionnants. Je sais que vous travaillez tout avec conviction pour rendre le monde meilleur. Vous avez une équipe exceptionnelle menée par votre directeur Daniel Cloutier, et je suis fier d'appeler un ami et un camarade. Bravo à toi, Dan, et à toute l'équipe. Continuez votre excellent travail et solidarité. Now, as always, we face many challenges. We face tough bargaining in this region and across the union in the years ahead, not least of which are our 5,000 transit members working right here in Vancouver and our major auto and airlines negotiations next year. Though we still have the BC NDP here, we almost lost everything to a Trump fan party dedicated to ripping up all our progress. Danielle Smith is still Alberta's premier, and it shows us what happens when Trump fans take office. Scott Moe is still the Saskatchewan premier, and the minimum wage is still the lowest. Racism is alive and well in Manitoba and elsewhere. Right-wing activists are fighting against truth and reconciliation instead of going forward with justice and dignity. Pay equity progress remains difficult, and intimate partner violence remains an epidemic. People can't get ahead, and poverty rates are far too high. The right to strike remains under threat, and even friendly governments are still far too timid on expanding our rights to organize and in taking bold steps to improve workers' lives. So we've cracked the door open in organizing at the previously untouchable, Walmart and Amazon, but we know they will stop at nothing to prevent us from reaching those fair first collective agreements. And as we all know, the right wing is on the march here and around the world. Wars and genocide break our hearts, and we hunger for stronger movements to stop the carnage. But always remember that our wins were not accidents. They were the product of planning, solidarity, and the courage of members and leaders who chose action over excuses. And that's how we moved in the last 3 years, from defense to offense. I was so happy to see so many Unifor members who joined me at the Vancouver airport just a few weeks ago, very short notice, to support the brave CUPE flight attendants who stood up to an arrogant corporation and, frankly, a reckless government. And this scene was repeated across the country. And that's what I love about Unifor. We show up for each other, for other union workers, for all workers, here and around the world. To our members, thank you. Thank you for trusting us to lead and also for always pushing us to be bolder. Now let's get out there and continue to do it together. Solidarity, everyone.